I want to tell you a very important story that every single human being on earth needs to pay undivided attention to in the very moment that we're in. On the 22nd of December 1989, we had the biggest road accident in Australian history. 36 people died. My brother and his wife, they were 22 years old, and they were on the Methodist bus heading south, right, to spend Christmas with their parents. They only got on the bus a few hours early, and they didn't know one person on the bus. 20 people died on that bus. Kathy, my brother's wife, died, okay? So what I want you to listen to is my brother was one of the most critically injured, okay, in the biggest road accident ever created in Australian history. God said every single thing about this happened for a reason, and you need to pay undivided attention to one of the most extraordinary things that's been created with evidence in human history, in modern history. Now listen to me very carefully. It's very important that you take this on board the way that it is. Okay, the way that it really is. So this is what happens. My brother gets flown into Brisbane PA Hospital, right? And on the top floor, right, Dr. Wright is one of the biggest surgeons in the world. He was the first person to do the heart and lung transplant, right? So he believes in saving people, but he didn't have any faith, right, in God existing. But he did believe in miracles in the sense that love, care, and compassion, right, does rule, and he has seen miracles happen in hospital. This is what he personally told me. When he told us that my brother Yan only had 5% chance of living. My brother had more than 200 broken bones in his body. Every single rib cage bone was broken. His whole chest was caved in. His spleen was taken out with 5 internal bleedings. Both his lungs collapsed. They cut him wide open down his chest and had big clamps on his chest, right, and gave him 5% chance of living on 2 bases, that he was young and fit, and that he had a loving, caring family that stood by him that needed to be there consistently to talk to him because he can hear us. This is what Dr. Wright said. So I sat there every night between 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. That was my shift. I sat there every night and went in there and counted every wine tube hanging off him, 136. I kept looking every night and counting them, hoping that something would come up with some kind of improvement. He was my brother and I was very close to him, and we were very close. So here's the facts. My brother flatlines after 3 weeks, right, for a couple of minutes, and then he wakes up. He comes out of the coma and he goes inside a ward. And this is what happens. This is what happens when he goes into a ward over the next 4 days. People come to say goodbye to him, right? In a 20, 30-second moment, right, he starts to look up in the ceiling in shock until they talk to him and talk nice to him, and then he settles down and he says thank you and says goodbye to each name, their first names. Now, we had pins and needles up and down our spine thinking something creepy is going on in the room in broad daylight. Now, this became a concern to the psychiatrist as we got their attention and thought maybe he's had a big bump on his head. But the funny thing was, he acted perfectly normal. Now, we were told not to tell him that Kathy died because he may not cope with it and may have a relapse. So we tried to keep this subject away from him. Yet the funny thing is, my brother acted perfectly normal as if he never had any head injury, right? None whatsoever, and perfectly normal, except for 20 or 30 seconds when these moments happen. But something extraordinary was, he never asked about Kathy neither. And we didn't tell him, and we couldn't work that out. So the doctors, including Dr. Wright, one of the biggest surgeons in the world, and one of the head psychiatrists for the Queensland Mental Health Board, right, they were starting to look right into this during these 4 days to make sure he was okay. Yet at the same time, they also wrote down each and every name he said goodbye to. The last person that came to him was Kathy, his own wife. And I'm just going to keep this very short, right, and sweet, so I want you to know something. This is what Kathy said. Kathy said that the bus driver responsible for the accident went to hell, and 19 people come to say goodbye to him, except for that driver. He was in fact responsible for the accident, and there's more to this, but there's no point in telling you this. I'm just telling you how it is. Kathy said the other 18 people were psychologically lost by social engineering. And I just thought that was extremely extraordinary all the way back in the 3rd week of 1990, fully recorded with evidence. Because at that very moment, she said she was the only one that went to heaven. And this means that 19 people didn't. 19 out of 20 is 95%. And I just want you to observe that for a moment. At that very moment that Kathy came to say goodbye to my brother, right, the psychiatrist and Dr. Wright came back with a list of the 18 names that he had said goodbye to. And they were the first name of every person that died on this bus, and they never knew any of them. Now, my brother never spoke to me for 26 years. On the 27th of February 2016, when God came to me, many extraordinary things happened, and I'll tell you one story at a time, but I want to tell you this. He told me, as I was being unlawfully deported, that he was going to send me through the toughest facial recognition system and the most sophisticated security system in the world, and he's going to send me back to see my brother and my mother. Why? Because this is what you really need to listen to very carefully. God said he's going to send me back to see my mother and my brother so I can feel this instinctively and not on social media platform to use psychological behavior. I need to feel these things because you never believe in nothing here, only half of what you see, but you feel the truth and heartbeat with adrenaline. You can feel these things. We're a creature of feelings, convey feelings and thoughts. So I'm going to send you back to see your mum in person so you will know what the truth is, and your brother. So I write 3 official letters that God asked me to write to Border Security, Immigration, and the Government Department. And this is what the letter states. It says that God will send me through the toughest security system and the most sophisticated security system in the world in a glitch if I get unlawfully deported. I file those 3 letters officially. Then I get unlawfully deported 4 months later. And this is what you need to listen to. I receive a 6-page letter from Interpol in Europe, and I'm told I can't travel to any country for 99 years and that I'm under investigation for any other further offences around the world. Now listen, guys. I died in 2012, okay? And I want you to listen to this, right? Very carefully. I changed and I've been completely reborn since that day God came to me. That's what I want you to have faith in. Now, on the 17th of September 2016, I go to Copenhagen International Airport, registered at the highest level under Interpol, without any facial construction, the way that I am. God told me to do this. And this is what I want you to have faith in. I go to Copenhagen International Airports, right, without a glitch in the system, with more than 200 international cameras in the airport, and I'm registered at the highest level. This has been confirmed. Trust me on this. Then I fly into Paris on the same day. That's the second event. Then I stay in Paris overnight, and on the 18th I get on the plane and go to LA. That's third and fourth event. Then I stay in LA for 4 months, and I get on the plane on the 26th September 2017 from LA, right, the fifth event. Then I land in Brisbane Airport on the 27th September 2017. Now, first, I'm going to tell you something. The 27th of February, the day that God came to me, was the most spectacular day in my life, and that's the day I was reborn with the most unbelievable miracles that happened. So the first thing I want you to know is that that day was my son's birthday, my grandson's birthday. And on the 27th January 2017, when I flew back into Brisbane, was my son's birthday. And I'm also born on the 27th, and God said that we're going into a 27-year walk in the Antichrist, and the book of Revelation, book 27, is unfolding. And it's all about paragraph 27, the salvation plan. And what begins this is the greatest psychological warfare against our spirits. It's about not flesh and blood, but principality and power. So God said to me on the 27th September 1999, a report came out from the aka+Christensen&s report. The primary problem for climate, we cannot change mankind from the way he thinks, and he's been designed reverse psychology, and he suffers the consequences. In mental institutionalization, with the human conditions throughout the whole Western civilization. So son, you're right, you're not programmed and you're not suffering this, but they are. Now, the first year 20 was held on the 26th September 1999, and the report came out on the 27th on my birthday, also the 27th. And God said we're going into the 27-year war against the Antichrist, and that was written right by Nostradamus in his prediction that in the 21st century, when the time of the 45th president, will be the unfolding of the 27-year war against the Antichrist. And he said to me, the first warning would be the oldest biblical church would start to go on fire. This would be the first trumpet, right? This is what God told me, and I never read the Bible, never knew nothing about God, never went to church because I didn't even believe in him until this very day. So, what does he say? The oldest Bible Jerusalem Bible will burn. That will be the first trumpet of Revelation. Well, that's the church that burnt, called Nostradamus Church in 2019. Biblical prophecy unfolding perfectly. Unbelievable. That's what I thought. Anyway, God said 27 is the most important number on the planet. It stands for the Holy Spirit and the divine light. And it is the most holy number in the Bible. And you can Google this and take a look at yourself. But God also said, It's the most important number on the planet that will be displayed in the center of our society, right? In the future, very short future in 2020. So my book was written, right? And every prophecy came out perfectly. And what I want you to understand about 27 is this. The same scientist who brought out that report on the 27th September, okay? You can go into YouTube and take a good look on a 2-minute video, okay? And you will see one of the most extraordinary things. They put up the New York climate clock on an end date from 220 to 227, a clock that will run backwards for 7 years until 227. And this clock will be displayed until the 27th September, my birthday, and the very same dates. Now, what do they say in this 2-minute video? They say this is the most important number on the planet put into the center of our society, exactly like God said. So it unfolded perfectly. So therefore you can have faith in what I'm about to tell you. So that day God says, I'm going to send you back through the international airports. And he does. On the 27th of January 2017, I walk through the airport and I go home to see my mum. So I want you to listen to this very carefully. I said to my mum, right, I have to explain something to you. When I was 5 to 6 years old, I went up to my mum and I said, Mum, where were we and what happened? She said, what are you talking about, son? I said, well, Mum, I remember being in a cellar with bowling ball racks on each side. And you're sitting on the floor, Mum, and you're shit scared. And I'm sitting in your arms and I'm terrified because I know you're terrified, Mum. And we're looking out this little window with bombs, boom, boom, boom. But I was born in 1960 and I've never been in any war. So I said to Mum, Mum, where were we? What happened? Because I remember this memory so perfectly clear like it happened yesterday to this very day. You know that type of memory? That's the type of memory it is. So my mum looks at me and says, what? What are you talking about? You're dreaming. And she starts running away, right? But instinctively, I could feel there was something wrong. And I thought, I'm probably not old enough. I'll have to ask her later. So I kept asking my mum and she kept behaving the same way. By the time I was 15, 16, my mum and dad started to reject me and ask me if I was evil, right? And this caused me massive problems throughout my life in rejection by my parents. So I want you to consider that for a moment, right? Because God says to me, that moment is real. He says, go back and ask your mum one more time and tell her. You must tell her. You must tell her that God said you must tell her that must tell me the truth, right? And he says to me, I'm going to send you to see your brother. And you're going to ask your brother why he hasn't spoken to you for 26 years at exactly the same time. So stop and consider this, guys. I go home and I said to my mum, I said, Mum, where were we? What happened? Because God said this moment is real. And you need to tell me because this is a confirmation to make us both understand that God does exist and he is real. So you told me you must tell him because this is the greatest confirmation that we will have that God does exist and he is real. Right? That's what God told me. So Mum freaked out. My mum went, oh my God, 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 oh my God. God's real, God's real, God's real. Oh my God, God's real. This is what my mum behaved like, right? I'm freaking out, man. I've got pins and needles all up and down my spine. And I'm freaking out. I think, my God, what's going to happen here, right? I'm just watching my mum and she's freaking out. And of course it freaks you out, man. It's a supernatural moment you don't understand, right? And it spins you out. So I'm standing there spinning out, right? And my mum looks at me and says, Kim, I never told you, but you were drowned in a bathtub at 2 years old. And me and your stepfather, Eric, right? We came in and we saved you, right? We got you to the hospital and got you revived. But you were flat as a doornail. You were even turning purple. But you were brought back to life. And then when you come up to tell me this, Kim, I freaked out, Kim. I absolutely freaked out because you told me about the most horrific moment of my life in my memory, Kim. And I freaked out, and I've never spoken to you about this because it freaked us out, Kim. It really freaked us out, and that's why we thought you were evil. I said, what are you talking about, Mum? I'm spinning out. She said, Kim, that moment is real. But that moment happened in 1943, and the way you described that cellar, and every single thing is perfect. But what really got me was when you told me exactly how my mum felt and how I felt in that moment, Kim, because it was perfect. But this is a moment that happened to me in 1943, 17 years before I was born. Can you just stop and imagine that? Can you please just stop and really imagine that hitting you like a ton of bricks, that you got a memory in your mind, right, that's your mum's, and you remember it perfectly and describe it perfectly, and even the feelings. But it's not a moment you've lived. But that's the greatest confirmation you could ever get, right? And it also freaks you out. The fear of God freaks you out, man, in the way that he works. Believe me, I know that better than anyone. So I gave her to see my brother, and I said to my brother, Yan, why haven't you spoken to me for 26 years? God told me you have to tell me right now. My brother behaves the same way. He goes, oh my God, it's real. Oh my God, I remember him. And all of a sudden he remembers, right? And I'm thinking, what's going on here? What is really going on here? I'm starting to freak out. I'm thinking, what am I going to expect now? And then my brother turns around and says, Kim, I remember now. I remember now. I said, what? He said, do you remember a flatline, Kim? I said, yeah. He said, you never told me Kathy died, right? And I never asked you. I said, that's right. He said, that's because I knew, Kim. I went into that dimension you were in when you died, Kim, where time stands still on low preserves and everything is perfect, right? Everything is perfect. No pain, no stress, no fear. The same dimension you went into when you died that you speak about, that dimension is so beautiful, Kim. And then I saw the love of my life, Kim, my wife. And then she said, I had to go back because of you, Kim. I had to go back because of you, Kim. Man, I'm freaking out, right? I'm seriously freaking out when my brother tells me this. Right? And you've got no idea how powerful something like this really hits you when these things have been planted inside you ever since you were born. You see, God works in mysterious ways means it's beyond comprehension or understanding. 10 days later, I'm in this in the detention centre in Brisbane. And here's where you really need to listen, guys. You really need to have faith in what I'm about to tell you. I've been on the phone with the head of border security and they recovered the 3 official letters that I told them that God would send me in, right? So they collected those 3 letters and I was on the phone with the head of border security and this is what he says to me. He says, listen, you had me believing you, but we checked the international cameras at every incident, right? At the 4 international airports, Copenhagen, Paris, LA and Brisbane. You're not on one camera, son. You're not on one single camera whatsoever and every other person that got on off the planes is, right? In that whole duration, you're not on one camera and you're registered at the highest level, Kim. We know that. So we know you send a decoy in. So you need to tell us, how did you really get in? And I sit back and I said, listen, guys, I told you how I got in and you got the letters, right? So believe me, that's how I got in, no matter what you believe. But I can tell you this, when I came through the international airport of Brisbane, right, the JP said, what are you coming to Australia for? And I said to him, I'm coming in to look at old, collectible Ford muscle cars. And he said, I'm a Ford man too. I own a 67 red Mustang. So I said to border security, listen, I've got red hair and freckles. I have not had a facial reconstruction, right? Okay, you have my photos. Take it to this guy who'll remember me. He'll remember that I'm the Ford man and he'll remember telling me that he owns a red 67 Mustang. This was confirmed. This was fully confirmed. The head of border security flew into Brisbane. He came in with a chaplain from Brisbane Detention Centre. Her name was Sarah. Okay, because she was in shock. He was an atheist, right? Just like Dr. Wright was. And I just need to tell you something about Dr. Wright for a moment. 2 years later, I was at the hospital PA to see a mate of mine on the bottom floor that had a mild stroke. And Dr. Wright was walking around looking at cancer patients who had 1, 2 or 3 months left to live. And I said to Dr. Wright, what are you doing down here when you got your own $52 million ward upstairs? And Dr. Wright said, Kim, we had the evidence that day, and something I've come to learn is that I was wrong about things. And I learned that with that evidence that we got, that he said goodbye to every person that died in that bus, I mean, that cannot be coincidental, right? And I have belief, Kim. I changed my whole faith system, and believe me, I realised I need to save people down here before they go out the back door. That was one of the most extraordinary moments I've ever seen. And here I am facing another one with the head of border security who was a complete atheist. And he sat down and he came in with Sarah, a chaplain, because he went to get advice from her first. He was completely lost with this investigation. And he was white when he came in, right, with a completely different look on his face, right, just completely in awe, right, in shock, right. His whole belief system was shattered, right, completely shattered as he realised, right, that God does exist. Because the evidence that he wrote down was that there was no other explanation. Why? They checked every international airport. He was on the phone and checked everything under the UN, right, with Interpol and in America and LA about this. No such evidence had ever been created. They went back and tested everything in the whole duration of the JPs who stamped my passport on their whole shift and the whole duration of those planes coming in and out of the airports. They went over and over and over, and he sat down and explained to me there wasn't a single glitch in the system in 6 different events. They couldn't find a single glitch in the system. Through this, they got another JP to confirm that I walked through the airport. Consider this. It just took a while for him to rattle his memory, but he remembers. So there was 2 confirmations. And there was a confirmation without being a single glitch in the system. And he wrote on the documents that can be FOI'd by any person that wants to that there was no other evidence in this incident on 6 different occasions. That night I was put on a 747 at the back of Brisbane Airport on a tarmac, right, to be flown into another detention centre to be redeported again. So I want you to listen to this. On the tarmac, there was 55 officers put on a 747 with me. That's how serious, right, and that's how worried they were about this situation, that they gave me 55 officers, right, and it was unbelievable. I was completely blown away myself. But here we are on the tarmac, stuck for an hour and a half because of one extraordinary thing that I don't think any human being on earth will ever experience. But obviously, this can be verified. Everything is fully recorded with evidence. Absolutely everything I talk about and every single thing about me. So listen to this. We're stuck on the tarmac because more than 20 of these guys got a bad gut feeling, a moral instinct feeling that they were doing something very horrible against God, as they knew that this was the most powerful evidence ever recorded in global history, in modern history with modern technology, and everything happened in a glitch. And I want you to have faith in just how powerful God works, and that he did choose me for the very time that we're in right now for many specific reasons. And that's why I urge that you sit down and watch all my videos from 29th of May 2022, and please have faith that I was chosen to save humanity.